An infidelity, the death of a son, and World War I have been key moments in the creation of Ferrari. It all began in Modena, a small Italian city in 1898 where Enzo Ferrari was born. His tough childhood marked his life forever. His father, Alfredo Ferrari, had a small metal structure business and pressured his son Enzo to continue with the family business. However, Enzo wanted to be a journalist or an opera singer. It wasn't until he was 17 that a great family tragedy would occur, breaking the family apart, which we will talk about later. The key point of the story took place in 1908, when Alfredo Ferrari took his son to see a car race near Modena. Fulfilling a lifelong dream, Enzo had the opportunity to see Vincenzo Lancia racing. From this moment, his life would be marked by car racing. Despite knowing he wanted to be a driver, his father did not accept it and sent his son to an engineering school. The great family tragedy began in 1914 when Alfredo was sent to World War I, dying of typhoid fever. Alfredo Ferrari died in 1916, and the family business almost immediately went bankrupt. During this tough time, Enzo Ferrari was left practically alone and jumped from job to job for more than a year. At 18, he was recruited by the army. The situation was bleak. The family was completely broken. Enzo was completely alone in the army with no one waiting for him at home because his father was deceased. Although he tried to demonstrate his skills as a mechanic in the army, his superiors did not take him into account and assigned him to shoe mules. Enzo contracted pleurisy, a commonly fatal disease, but he managed to overcome it. One of the most important moments came at age 20 when Enzo finished his army service, but he found himself in a post-war Italy in total crisis. Enzo managed to escape to Turin, the Italian automotive capital, to seek fortune. He applied for a job at Fiat, but was not considered. A year later, he managed to get a job at a small car manufacturing company called CMN in Milan. There, Ferrari bought a used Alfa Romeo to compete in races, catching the attention of Alfa Romeo executives, who invited him to work for the brand and compete with their race cars. Soon after, he was promoted to racing driver and made his competitive debut in the 1919 Parma Poggio di Berceto hill climb race, where he finished fourth. Incredibly, in this race, he met Laura Domenica Garello, with whom he married in 1923 and had a son. After this unexpected event in 1920, Ferrari joined Alfa Romeo's racing department as a driver. Ferrari won his first Grand Prix in 1923 in Ravenna at the Circuito del Savio. 1924 was his best season, with 3 victories. At the same time, he developed a taste for the organizational aspects of Grand Prix racing. Believe it or not, after the birth of his son Alfredo in 1932, Ferrari decided to retire and focus on the management and development of factory Alfa race cars. His ambition led Ferrari to ask Alfa Romeo to allow him to become a dealer for the brand. Something terrible was about to happen. Alfa Romeo planned to compete with a car called the P1 in the Italian Grand Prix held at the Monza circuit. Ferrari, along with several mechanics he convinced to leave Fiat and start working with him, arrived at Monza a day before the race. Ugo Savocci was the chosen driver, but during the reconnaissance lap, he went off the track and died. Ferrari then suffered a severe emotional crisis. After this tough moment, Enzo did not give up, and although his P1 design was an absolute failure, he redesigned it, creating the P2. At the key moment, the P2 won the race, achieved the lap record, and the highest speed on the track. The beginning of Ferrari was about to start. Enzo proposed to Alfa Romeo that he take charge of the company's racing activities, which Alfa Romeo accepted. On December 1, 1929, Ferrari opened the doors to what would become Scuderia Ferrari. Despite his professional successes, his family life was far from pleasant. His mother and his wife Laura detested each other. In 1932, Laura gave birth to their first son, Dino Ferrari. However, almost immediately, the child was diagnosed with muscular dystrophy. Enzo suffered terribly from not being able to do anything for his son and tried in vain to stop the disease with various diets and medications imported from several countries. Finally, Dino died in 1956 at the age of 24, causing intense pain for Enzo Ferrari. From then on, Enzo visited his son's grave every morning before going to work. Amid these tough moments, the international situation became complicated. In 1939, World War II began, and Mussolini, along with Germany, launched invasions. Professionally, he also faced a complicated situation. Alfa Romeo broke ties with Enzo's Scuderia, forcing him to work with the fascist government to survive financially for both himself and the Scuderia. Thus, in 1940, Auto Avio Costruzioni Ferrari was born, working with the National Aviation Company in Rome. During World War II, the Ferrari factory was bombed in 1944 and rebuilt in 1946, the year in which the design and manufacture of the first Ferrari began. In that same year, something unexpected happened. During his constant trips to Maranello, he met Lina Lardi, a secretary with whom he had an affair at 46, while still married to his wife. With her, he had his second son, Piero, who is now the vice president of the car brand founded by his father. A new professional opportunity would arise for Ferrari. The war ended, and in 1947, Enzo and the public were ready to return to car racing. In this year, Enzo completed the development of the Ferrari 125. The first race in which a Ferrari would compete was in Piacenza. It was a crucial moment for the brand. Ferrari's expectations were high, both for him and the Italian press. In the race, with only 3 laps to go and the Ferrari car in the lead, the fuel pump broke. After this event, Enzo would describe the 125 as a promising failure. Enzo never attended competitions and from this moment never again attended a race where a Ferrari competed. Despite this failure, Ferrari suddenly had several brilliant ideas, and Enzo began the development of several unprecedented vehicles with never-before-seen speeds. Financial problems arrived. Ferrari started winning almost every competition, but the costs of racing were enormous, and Ferrari was running out of money. Therefore, despite his total lack of interest in the idea, Ferrari began selling touring versions of his cars. But the never-before-seen speeds also brought consequences. Car racing was a dangerous business, and drivers started dying on the tracks at an increasing rate. The most shocking event occurred in 1957 during the Mille Miglia, a popular race of the time, with 5 Ferraris among more than 250 participants. More than 10 million people came to watch the cars pass along the circuit. Due to its length, it was almost impossible to control the entire audience. The most powerful Ferrari, the 335 with a 4.1-liter engine, driven by the promising Spanish driver Alfonso de Portago, lost control and went into the crowd. More than 15 people died, including, of course, the driver, and many more were injured. Enzo Ferrari was charged with unpremeditated homicide. 4 years later, the charges were dropped. In 1978, Laura Dominica Garello died, and Ferrari took refuge with his then-lover Lina Lardi, his son Piero, and his granddaughter Antonella. Despite 1979 being a very good season for the Scuderia, the following years were disastrous, with many defeats and driver deaths. Enzo fell seriously ill with kidney disease in 1978, after which he spent much time in bed. On August 14, 1988, around 1 in the afternoon, Enzo Ferrari died in his bed, surrounded by his family in Maranello. He died at the age of 90 due to leukemia. Before his death, Enzo did something unusual. As a private person who feared public protests due to the fact that the Ferrari team had been defeated by McLaren in all the races of the 1988 season so far, Enzo expressed the wish that his death be reported to the media only on August 16th, the day after his burial. Shortly before his death, he witnessed the launch of the Ferrari F40, which was dedicated as a symbol of his achievements. In 2002, Ferrari began production of the Ferrari Enzo, named after its founder. The Italian Grand Prix was held a few weeks after Ferrari's death, resulting in a 1-2 finish for Ferrari. Since Ferrari's death, the Scuderia Ferrari team has had unstoppable success that continues today. In addition to sporting successes, the company has annual profits of nearly $1 billion. It is a pity that Enzo did not witness the great successes his brand has achieved in recent years.